Hey everyone, Dan Saavedra here from MergeYourData, and I thought that it would be useful to create a little series on how to use Claude with HubSpot. We've been using it more and more inside of our consultancy, and it's really just crazy how much you can do if you know how to use the tool with HubSpot. And so this course, it's going to start off with a very beginner-friendly type approach where we're starting from the very foundations and building up. But we're going to cover everything from the very fundamental use cases to the really advanced and complex use cases that we're using day to day in our consultancy operations. And so if you know some of this basic stuff, use the chapters, skip to the next video, whatever you want to do. If you want to start from the beginning, then welcome. Appreciate you guys stopping by. In the spirit of using Claude with HubSpot, we actually generated this presentation with AI too. So you're going to see plenty of M dashes. We obviously did some human in the loop here and modified the content to make sure that's 100% accurate. But we're going to get into it here. And so this part one here is going to be AI plus HubSpot, the foundations with Claude. So no technical background required. We're going to walk you through every step of the way here. And then we're going to get into actual real use cases, do some screen share on it. It's not going to be a presentation the whole time. And you're going to see how you can start using this in your HubSpot account. And so before we even jump into that, I'd like to talk about why you like to use AI in HubSpot. And this is coming from the perspective of someone who's a very advanced CRM user, has been building solutions for people for many, many years now, runs a team who does it, has worked in 120 plus accounts across our teams. So there's a lot of perspective here in terms of why you would want to use AI and how you would want to use it as well. Because HubSpot obviously has their own AI capabilities, but we like to use Claude because it just goes a little bit further and makes the experience a little bit better. And so the obvious ones are obviously speed, cutting hours of manual work to minutes. We'll show you some real examples of that. Precision. So compared to having to learn the user interface or tinker around with different types of filters and stuff like that, oftentimes you can get really precise with your outputs using just Claude. And so you can just have sharper segmentation without having to mess around and look through fields. You can scale without having to add headcount. So a lot of times you can actually get done what 2-3 admins would be doing in a day if you're effectively using Claude, especially when we get into Claude code and those types of use cases. And then last but not least, it frees you up for more creativity if you know how to use it. So we're not talking about offloading the creativity exercises and work to Claude. We're talking about collaborating with Claude to write better copy, emails, and workflows without just handing it off to them, without having to spend many, many hours just in your own little bubble. And so we like to use Claude to shortcut all of these things and make us more effective and free us up to think more from the strategic approach. And we would encourage you to do the same. We're not looking for you to just use Claude blindly here. It gets stuff wrong occasionally. That's why we have to go through and review the presentation before giving this video here. So we want to make sure that we're thinking about our organization, we're thinking about any updates that are being made before actually just letting Claude run free. And so high level, you guys probably know this if you're watching this video, how Claude works. You give it context, it responds, and then you can stay in control. You can give it feedback, you can ask it from different angles, you can provide context, and it will change its output and change its plan. And so you just want to make sure that you're really treating this as someone who's maybe like a junior in their field, and you're giving them direction, you're giving them guidance, you're pushing back against things that don't sound quite right. We don't want to treat this as some type of seer that just knows everything that we want to accomplish and we'll get it right on the first go. So keep that in mind when we're talking about how Claude works here. We can do a lot of things here. We can paste data. We can pull data from other systems. We can ask it to rewrite or organize. So we're going to do all of that. But that's not all, because there's also 3 specific things we're going to be focusing on with Claude's capabilities with HubSpot. And we like to compare it to a junior HubSpot admin. There's nuances to that, but skill level wise, probably pretty close to that if you know how to work it. One, it can use the API. So even though the native connector for Claude has some limitations, because we can use Claude code and go outside of that and use the API, we can actually extend what we can do with Claude and HubSpot. 2, it lets you operate out of one place. You're in the chat terminal. You're talking to it. You don't have to be clicking around different parts of HubSpot. You can get a lot done right from there. And last but not least, it gets better with guidance. So the more specific you are and the more you know your business and the data that should be around, the more likely it's going to be to help. And so overall, this is the setup of using Claude with HubSpot in a non-API fashion. So this is the first setup we're going to do. In a future video in the course, we are actually going to get into the advanced use cases, which includes setting up Claude Code and using the API. But this is in general how you do it. One, you're going to want to make sure to have super admin permissions in HubSpot or the ability to connect any type of marketplace app or third-party app. So you're going to need those permissions in order to get this connected. Then you're going to want to connect the HubSpot MCP in Claude. And so let's go and do that right now. It'll depend on your plan, but basically what you want to do is you want to open up your menu over here in the bottom left. You're going to want to go to Settings. You're going to want to go to your connectors here. And then you're going to want to connect the HubSpot MCP. So basically, you're going to go to the connectors. You're going to search for HubSpot. You're going to allow its MCP. You're going to select its app here, and then you're going to install it. When you're going through the configuration, you'll have read-only tools here. You'll have write and delete tools. We have them on as always allow because we're very precise with our commands. We know how to roll it back if things go wrong. But if you want to have it ask for approval every time, you can set that up for each specific tool in here. Just take a look at these, determine what you think is right here and what sensitive data you might have in there, and then make sure that's connected. That's the setting permissions part. Next, we're going to go and make sure that it's enabled. And so when we're in an actual chat here, if it's enabled, it should be able to pull up information specifically from HubSpot without you having to explicitly add the tool. But it's always good to check. You can click on the plus button here, and you can go and see if there's an ad from HubSpot in here. You can also see if in the connectors you have HubSpot connected. And so you can see we have it here. We have the add from HubSpot button, and so it actually gives us some pre-written prompts that we can use. But now we know that it's working. We're going to be able to chat with it. We're going to be able to pull information and write information to HubSpot from directly inside of the Claude chat. One note on this is that there are limitations. From this specific connector, you can't access the lead objects. You're not going to be able to create quotes, invoices, users, and more. You're not going to be able to delete. And then you're going to also need an API, or we're going to need to set up the API in order to do these things. They are capable through the API, but they are not capable through this connector. And so you can actually see here, so set up the HubSpot connector for Claude. Down in the bottom here, you have all of the capabilities for this connector and what it can and can't do. And so just good thing to take note of. There are workarounds for this using the API, but there will be limitations when you're just using the chat. So let's get into some real examples here. First, we're going to go over drafting some email copy. And so this one, we're going to do a little more advanced use case than just sending any general email into HubSpot here. What we want to actually do first is we're going to pull some information from the HubSpot account of a specific record. We want to see all the activity associated to it so that we can then draft a follow-up email. And so I'm going to say, can you please pull the activity and property information on dandata.com from HubSpot. And so I'm going to just show you step by step here how it's done. You can skip these steps and put them all into one prompt often, but just for demonstration purposes, we're going to go through here and show you. So Claude right now is searching for CRM objects. It's looking for this contact. It finds it. It gives me a link to it, and it's going to give all of this information here on the actual contact record. And so you can see it gives us a summary of everything going on, a few things worth noting. It even captures from our other conversations that I now live in Roanoke, Virginia. No associated deals. there's a duplicate contact. So we already have useful information that we didn't even ask for. But let's focus on the email copy here. I'm going to ask it, can you please draft an email to send to Dan to reactivate him since he's a stale lead. We want to try to position ourselves to sell our HubSpot admin services. How about that? I'll say make it concise and human sounding. Use any context from the activities. And so now we have a prompt in here for Claude that we're going to draft an email to send to Dan. We're going to make sure that we're pulling in activity information. We're going to try to make it sound a little bit human here. And you can see Claude actually going through and trying to scan through the different activity on my record here. Now, one note is that it's going to provide this output here inside of Claude. We can open it in Mail. That's an option. So we can actually just open it in Mail and it'll open Gmail, for example, or any other email client that you're using. And then if we have the HubSpot extension installed, then everything's going to log and we're good to go. If we want to refine this, we obviously can do that. We can actually type directly in here with Claude at the moment. The other thing that we can do is if we want to do this for someone else on our team, for example, obviously we can't send the email on their behalf. So instead what we're going to ask, can you sync this to HubSpot? I don't know right now if it's able to create a sales email or create a marketing email. So I'm going to give it directions to try different things. So I'm going to say, can you sync this to HubSpot? If you can't sync it via an email draft or a sales email, just add it as a note on the contact. And so I know that HubSpot can have notes added from Claude here. And so if it can't actually draft the email, then it's going to make a note. And it looks like that's what it did. And so now I'm just going to open the link. And so now I have on the activity timeline this note. And so all I have to do is copy and then paste it in here and send it. And so we can actually load in emails for other team members by doing this type of approach here. We can assign a task and put it in the task body as well. So there's a lot of different routes here. And so that's the quick win for Claude right there, email copy. Okay, and so next we're gonna actually do list segmentation, segments inside of HubSpot using Claude. Now, with the Claude chat interface, we're not gonna actually be able to create the list inside of HubSpot. So the best we're gonna be able to get is have Claude specify the list filters, and then we're just gonna have to manually build it inside of HubSpot. So the benefit of this is that Claude can do a pretty good job of pulling in different information from a sample data set in order to build relevant list criteria, can look across our entire schema. HubSpot has this functionality inside of their AI and the segment builder, but it seems to be lacking at the moment of this video in terms of the accuracy of the results. It's hit or miss, but it is worth exploring just because it can create the entire list for you inside of the HubSpot UI. But we're going to keep it in Claude here. With the Claude code setup that we'll go over in the future, you can actually create the segment using the API. And so that gets you the full loop there, and you can get really powerful output from that. But we're just going to do the criteria here. So I'm going to say, can you create a set of segments, and I'll put in parentheses list, criteria for a contact list. I want to find contacts that aren't customers I haven't had activity with them in at least 1 month, and they don't have any open deals. So for someone who works in the CRM a lot, this is a a list that they could build in, I don't know, 30 seconds inside of HubSpot. But the point of using Claude with HubSpot is that you're not going to have to become a CRM expert in order to leverage the tool for what you're looking to do. And so HubSpot is actually going, or HubSpot, Claude is actually going to show you here the filter logic that you can apply with the actual properties that HubSpot has. So number of associated deals, last activity date, last contacted, and the lifecycle stage. It's not always 100% perfect, obviously. Double check these when you're actually inside of HubSpot, but it also gives you some additional ideas here. We want to exclude contacts with bounced emails. We want to filter contacts created at least 90 days ago to exclude brand new leads, and then add lifecycle stage equals MQL or SQL or lead. And then if I wanted to get more specific, can you give me any other recommendations based off my data model? I want to convert these people into meetings. So really basic prompt here, but we're just giving Claude something to look at a little bit more to guide it. So that gives us additional ideas. So it's really good for ideation here. It's able to look at all of our properties across all of our CRM objects, obviously except for the leads. And then we can see if there's additional filters that we can pull in for the segment. Once we have that, we build it in HubSpot manually, and then we're good to go. So the ideation here inside of the Claude chat is the real value add for using Claude with HubSpot. We can see here, we have these different bad timing lead statuses, lead status equals new, partner exclusion, no one in the mid funnel, tons of different ideas here that Claude is giving us. So it just gives us different ways to think about these lists where we're not having to click around inside of HubSpot to find these different opportunities. All right, data cleanup here. So data cleanup is another really interesting use case because obviously with Data Hub Professional, which is something that we configure a lot and we use a lot, it has its own cleanup capabilities in there. But you can actually do some of this with Claude. And so an example is, can you find emails that are potentially misspelled domain names? So this is a common one that you'll run across if you're running ads. A lot of people will mistype gmail.com. They'll type in gmail.com. If their domain for their company email address is long or complicated, they'll have the same thing happen where they just mistype it. And so here we are looking through CRM objects. It's trying to figure out how it can extract in bulk and take a look at common misspellings. So it's finding out here that the API can't do fuzzy matching, but it's going to find another way to do it. So this is the power here. Back in the day, maybe even 2 years ago even, if you didn't have specific tools built for this cleaning, you would have to build in the logic to look for those misspellings. So what we used to do, we used to have a running list of all of these different domain misspellings, and then we would route them through different workflow branches to correct them. But now, instead, HubSpot, I keep switching them, Claude is actually going to pull all of the domains here and run its own fuzzy match and then return anything that may or may not be wrong. So now we see here, we have some suspicious ones. We have uh-ohs. And then we have some other ones in there that may or may not be typos. You can see we have a pretty clean portal, which is obviously expected. I have a misspelling on our own email address. And so it's calling that out. We can ask it to fix this afterwards. So we can actually just say, can you please fix the high confidence one? If you can't update it, just provide me a link so I can delete or merge it. And so obviously we know with this connector that we can't delete records. And so instead, it might just provide us with a link there. And so it says, okay, this already exists on your main contact record, which makes sense. So we're gonna have to go in there and merge it. If it was just a misspelling and there was no other potential correct spelling in your CRM, then it would just update the email address. So that's quick win number 3. And then last but not least, we have mapping out automation steps before building in HubSpot. So this is another one of those where with the API, we can actually create the workflows inside of HubSpot using the API and using Claude Code. But because we're using the chat here, we can map out the workflow logic and just understand how we want to build it. And so this is very useful for things like lead routing workflows, where if you're not familiar with how HubSpot workflows route and what type of criteria or steps you need to put in there, you can actually specify everything in here, and then it'll give you the build guide that you can go and actually build the workflow with. And so you can even ask it, what can you do with workflows in HubSpot? And it'll tell you that you can't access them. So can't create, edit, or trigger HubSpot workflows directly. And so what we're going to do instead is we're going to say, I want you to build out the blueprints to create a workflow in HubSpot for the following situation. I want everyone or every contact who comes in and is in the Southeast United States be routed to Dan Saavedra, and everyone else to be routed to Heather. And so you can get as complex with this as you want. And what it's going to do is going to find the owners. It's going to come up with some criteria for Southeast United States versus the rest. It already finds that there's 2 Dan Saavedras in here, so it'll ask for specifications. It gives us a list of the Southeast state region is any of, and then it tells us what actions and then what to watch out for. So now we can take this and just go build it inside of HubSpot. We want to verify by testing in the workflow once we build it that it's correct. But now we just shortcutted this whole process. We don't have to go and think and map this all out. We actually just gave it the end state. We asked it for its blueprint. It gave us something to now try out and test. And then once we verify, we can use it. And so that's 4 quick wins for using Claude with HubSpot. Things that would have taken someone just beginning with HubSpot multiple hours to do and to figure out inside of the tool. And now you can do it really quickly with Claude. Once again, for this video, we're starting out at the low level. We're going to get more advanced here. And so if you looked at these examples and you're like, I already knew I could do that, well, we're going to get into more advanced ones. So we'll have a part 2 coming up here. And so in this part 2, we're going to go over something like this, where we're going to clean up a messy contact property inside of Claude. And then we'll also be going over more like day-to-day sales type activities. We'll do end user focus. So we might have some marketing stuff and some customer success stuff in there as well. And so we'll just dive into, you can like this little HubSpot AI generated image with all its random characters and text here. But we'll get into the more day-to-day for this. And then for the really advanced stuff with Claude Code, with the API, with doing things at scale, these little nice tips and tricks of stuff that we use in our delivery to clients. Obviously, we have large parts that are strategy and organizational focus from a revenue operations perspective. The building is one thing, but knowing what to build, when, and how is just other parts of the puzzle here. So we're going to show you how in the advanced course. It is going to be a gated course that you do have to pay for, because it is a lot of our proprietary methods that we use, but you'll be able to use them yourself inside of your role, inside of your organization. It'll really unlock a crazy amount of productivity for you. So after part 2, and we're done with the fundamentals of using Claude with HubSpot, we're going to get into the really advanced use cases. You'll be able to sign up for that. And we hope that you enjoy all the course content. If you have any other topics that you want to have us dive into, then just let us know in the comments, obviously. And we're going to try to share as much as we can here in terms of actual use cases for using Claude inside of HubSpot. I'm Dan Saavedra from MergeYourData. If you want to help If you do have any questions, if you do have any advice, no, start over. Now, if you do have any questions around HubSpot, or you just don't want to get into the details of all of the configuration inside of the portal and making sure that it is aligned with your organization, aligned with your sales process, aligned with your marketing processes, actually functions across the organization, teams actually use it, then book a call on our website. We run the whole system from front to back, the entire revenue operations process for companies here. We use a lot of the little methodologies here that you'll see for the operation side of thing and delivering the product. But it goes way beyond that, and the impact is way larger when you can piece together the entire puzzle. So once again, thanks for watching. I'll see you on part 2. I hope you have a good day.